Good morning. It's September 8, 2023, and we're here for another edition of our post-cabinet press briefing. First, we'd like to welcome our Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Michael Holness, as well as our Deputy Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Horace Chang, representative from the police force led by Major General Anthony Anderson, representatives from the Jamaica Defense Force led by Brigadier Markland Lloyd, who is acting Chief of Defense Staff. Welcome to you, our listeners and viewers online, and also welcome to members of staff from the Office of the Prime Minister, Jamaica Information Service, and other members. We will start with our Prime Minister, but after which we will have Dr. Dana Morris Dixon, who is Minister without Portfolio in charge of Digital Transformation and Skills. And she will be accompanied by Dr. Tanisha Ingleton, who is the head of Heart and Estate Trust, and Mrs. Anika Shuttleforth, who is acting CEO of eGov. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, to make his presentation. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Minister Morgan. Let me say that this is my first attendance at the revised and renewed post-cabinet that you have spearheaded, Minister Morgan. Continue to do the good job that you have been doing in keeping the nation informed. I was just wondering, why do you have two separate? Oh, okay, good. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen who are here, members of the press, members of the security force, our Attorney General, ministers who are here. And good morning, Jamaica. After careful consideration and review of the current crime situation in St. James, His Excellency, the Governor General, has declared a state of public emergency in the entire parish of St. James. I advised the Governor General to make the declaration on the recommendation of the Chief of Defense Staff and the Commissioner of Police. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the assessment of the security forces that the situation in St. James merits this response and the use of emergency powers. I'm sure that that is not in debate. Yesterday, the Parliament rose in unison to condemn the murder, barbaric murder of innocent lives, young children who had their entire future ahead of them. And for all parents, it must be a consideration in your mind that it could have been your children. And so we take this moment as we declare our response to grieve with the families and to encircle them and surround them with our prayers for comfort at this time. But we also give resolute assurance to the people of Jamaica that we will not wilt, we will not resile in the face of terror. The circumstances of the actual crime, or rather act of terror, will be dealt with by the heads of the security agencies when they come to present. But I want you to bear in mind that the response of the government has been, first of all, proportionate, restrained, and we have been very strategic as well. The public will recall that when we declared the use of zones of special operations, we were targeting the top 20 most violence-prone communities. Salt Spring in St. James was one of those communities. We decided that we would go with another community in St. James, Mount Salem, and the results there are indeed commendable. I would say the results of our long and persistent intervention using the zones of special operation is a model for the transformation of communities. But it did not make the news, and we did not necessarily promote it either, that crime in Salt Spring also went down. In fact, the two communities started out at about the same level of risk for crime and were delivering almost similar results in terms of crime. But we decided to take the zones of special operations into Mount Salem, but use a different approach to Salt Spring. The commanders on the ground from the St. James Police Division will tell you that they have expended significant resources in that area in terms of working with the communities, in terms of the education of children, the employment of youngsters, and engaging the community for their own security. So we did take a different strategic approach to Salt Spring. And you will hear, obviously, the commentary of citizens and the police that the area was effectively, for a very long time, crime-free. Maybe that would be a stretch, but certainly the level of crime had reduced significantly. When we saw that there was now a resurgence of gang warfare in the area, we used the tools of curfew, increased police presence, and normal policing operations. But that did not seem to bring the internecine gang war under control. The commissioner, I'm sure, in his presentation will tell you how many persons have been killed within the last week. The actual circumstance of this act of terror is that someone, obviously a citizen of Jamaica, a son of Jamaicans, a member of community, someone who went to our schools, someone who may be a parent himself, obviously lay-weighted, someone who is a target in a public passenger vehicle, in a taxi, that any of you here today, if you were in St. James, anyone listening to me, you could be in a taxi. In a public space, opens fire, using a weapon that overpenetrates. It's a high-powered weapon. This is not ordinary crime. This is the worst of the worst. The result is that another young Jamaican, I believe he was 26 years old, wanted by the police, on our radar. We obviously have intelligence on him. But he felt that he was at large to hide himself in public in a public passenger transport that is known to carry children, and the result this morning, well, last evening, is that or the evening before rather, two innocent young children, Justin Perry, 7 years old, and Nakolev Smith, 9 years old. There was also another youngster in the back of the car. For inches, he survived. I am not here this morning to stir up the nation into vengeance. But I think this country needs to stop sending mixed signals to criminals. They are not going to return any grace you give them. They are not reasonable people. They are terrorists, and they must be treated as such. What occurred is an act of terror. What is terror? It's a well-defined concept in law. It was clearly the intent to send a chilling signal. No matter where you are, who you are, or whether you're in public, or whether innocent people are around, they are going to kill you. And they will use any means to do it. They don't respect your human rights. They don't respect your dignity. And they have no concern, none whatsoever, for your safety and security. If we have not yet realized that in the pursuit of their limited and narrow objectives, they are also pursuing the destruction of our state. This is not what is acceptable in a free and democratic society. Where will it end? You will have noticed that the profile of our murders have changed in the last year. But you would have also noticed that the security forces have also improved and changed and grown and become far more adept at their jobs. They are bringing to the justice system criminals at a faster rate. They are doing excellent work in gathering evidence to put before our courts. There are still challenges because the system is an intelligent system. It is learning. There are challenges. We have resource gaps, but we are closing those. That was the case 10 years ago. Very complex cases, because we have made the investment in increasing both the numbers in our security forces, but more importantly, the capacity, particularly the integration of technology to improve our intelligence gathering, our detective and evidence gathering work, our community relations, our communications, our equipment, and our use of weapons. There's no question whatsoever. that on any grading scheme, our security forces have improved significantly. And that is why you're seeing the containment and the gradual reduction, trending down in murders. But we notice this new profile of crime, that the criminals in an event of terror or a murder act, they are killing more people. So we have seen this spate of double, triple, and quadruple murders. It has to be studied. We can't make an assumption that as the police narrows the opportunity for the commission of crimes, the people who actually get the opportunity use it to increase the severity and barbarity of the crimes that they actually commit. Or it could be that our criminals now have more access to high-powered weapons that do more damage. It could be a number of things, and that is something that we have to investigate. But it could also be that there is intelligence directing the barbarity. And we must never overlook that there is organized violence in our community. Gang members whose sole existence is to create mayhem and chaos. And that, ladies and gentlemen, my Jamaican people, is the definition of terror. So today we are going to respond, not with vengeance, not with the dispensing of our dignity as a people, to maintain our laws and to show the criminals that we don't act like criminals, but to use the law with blunt force on them. We have been proposing to Parliament the increase in penalties for various crimes. And there has emerged a narrative which I believe is a naive narrative. It assumes a luxury that does not exist. Comparatively, our scheme of penalties for these crimes and these acts of terror is very light compared to other countries that we wish to compare ourselves to or aspire to be. If this happened in other free and democratic countries, the response would be clear and unequivocal. So, we have passed the new Bail Act, which does give new powers to deal with this challenge, particularly in controlling criminals who have come into the legal and justice system. We passed a new firearms bill, new Firearms Act. There has been some lack of clarity in its applications. The DPP has written to the relevant minister, I believe it would be the Minister of National Security, suggesting certain amendments. We have always felt that the penalties should be higher. But of course, there is this strong narrative that we should give protection to criminals. The penalties should be much higher than they are for the possession of illegal weapons. And so we will amend the legislation to remove any ambiguity or lack of clarity. I have given the directive to the Minister of National Security and the Minister of Justice that the amendment must be done before the end of the current session of Parliament. In other words, it must be completed before Christmas. There must be no ambiguity. Criminals must know that we are serious. The possession of a weapon must be treated with as the highest order of punishment. My own view on the penalty for murder has evolved. I was never a supporter of the death penalty. But the more I study this matter and begin to understand the minds of the criminals, there are no souls there. They have no heart. They need to be removed from among us. But I'm not here to get into a debate about the jurisprudence on this matter. But within the limits of that jurisprudence, I believe the highest penalty possible should be applied. And currently, the penalties now are not a deterrent. And there is an argument being put forward that somehow, if we increase the penalties, we will have overcrowding in our prisons, or people will not plead guilty and seek to use weaknesses in cases and our security forces to beat the charge, and that somehow there will be a backlog in our courts. There is validity in all of the arguments put forward. But I think those people who carry those arguments should be aware that Jamaica's incarceration rate is the lowest in the region. For a country that has so much crime, our incarceration rates are amongst the lowest. Could there be a correlation there? It needs to be studied. The assumption that somehow people are not going to take guilty pleas is an assumption based on the old perspective that we will not be able to build good cases. I wish to dispel that, as I have done before. Our investment in our forensic capabilities, our investment in our surveillance and intelligence capabilities, our investment in training our detectives would have demonstrated that we have the capability, and we are constantly honing that capability to bring airtight cases to our courts. We appreciate the judiciary in holding high standards so that we fulfill our obligations under the Constitution. And as a result of that, we are trying very hard. We don't always get it right. The Commissioner will tell you, the Minister of National Security will tell you that I'm on their cases all the time. But we are committed to making the investments to bring the cases. So we're not leaving any room on the table for criminals to believe that they will escape. Now is the time for the nation to speak in one clear voice to the soulless, heartless criminals amongst us. We are going to remove you from our community. Let us get the toughest measures in place. So I will call upon now Brigadier Lloyd to give, Commissioner first? Commissioner, to make a presentation on the circumstances of the events that happened 2 days ago and the declaration of the state of public emergency.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, good morning. So yesterday, a team of us, including the Deputy Prime Minister, Brigadier Lloyd, the acting CDS, myself, members of the police team in St. James, visited a couple of communities in St. James. And this was consequent on the murder of 3 persons in a taxi on November the 6th, which included 2 minors, a 7-year-old, Justin, and a 9-year-old, Nakalova. These children's parents were inconsolable when we went there. So this is not just about a statistic, another number and another person killed. These parents were inconsolable. They were asking themselves what could they have done differently to have prevented the killing of their children. So the children are the victims of a gunman, as the Prime Minister said, took an assault rifle and opened fire on a taxi, killing what seemed to be the intended target, but also penetrating that target and going and killing 2 small children behind it. Now, this follows a double murder in Salt Spring only a few days before, where the persons killed died in front of a small school in Salt Spring. This is a school that the JCF kind of adopted about 3 or 4 years ago. It is actually the epicenter of the peace-building arrangements in Salt Spring. And the people there had come to expect peace for the last 3 to 4 years. Now, Salt Spring, for those who know, was one of the more dangerous communities, probably in the country. And for 3 or 4 years, they had experienced peace. Now they had this incident occur, and the other incident that followed involving the 2 children. The illegal guns that are in the community continue to endanger the safety of our people. The criminal gangs that spread terror with little or no consideration for injury and loss of lives, even if it involves children. But there's a wider context to these killings. Someone knew before that the person was going out to shoot. Someone supplied the firearm and ammunition. Someone perhaps paid for it to be done. And someone is protecting that person now as we speak. Now, everyone in that group, everyone associated with it, owns a part of the death of those kids and a part of the misery and pain in the lives of those mothers and those communities. This and other communities will not be left to the mercies of these criminal terrorists. And the security forces have and will bring all the tools available to bear on the situation. St. James has been one of the more violent parishes in the country, with organized and highly violent criminal gangs, affiliates, and breakaway factions engaged in deadly inter- and intra-gang conflicts. As at November the 6th, the St. James Division recorded 167 murders and 100 shootings, the highest violent crime recorded in any police division, and it is down from where it was. It is down, but we're nowhere near where it should be. When you add access to funds obtained through advance fee fraud or lotto scamming, the proceeds of the illegal drug trade and extortion, proceeds of which are used to purchase illegal guns, and other contract killings, it creates the conditions for what we're seeing. These are the circumstances that are fueling violent crimes. We've been arresting these criminal terrorists and violent offenders and disrupting and prosecuting criminal gangs and gang members. We have seized over 180 illegal guns in St. James alone, representing 30% of the country's total firearm seizure, which currently stands at 608 firearms seized since the start of the year. We've laid 916 firearm-related charges against 841 persons within the first year of the passage of the new Firearms Act. But despite this, the epidemic of violence persists at a scale and of a nature that greatly endangers the safety of communities and the vulnerable. As a consequence, and in consultation with the Acting Chief of Defense Staff, we requested that a state of public emergency be declared in the parish of St. James. We have seen the data. We have demonstrated through previous states of emergency that this methodology has been very effective in quickly reducing violent crimes. It's important to recall when the emergency powers were first brought into effect, St. James' reductions in killings were 70%. We still have not and will not return to those days. An SOE at this time will allow us to optimize available resources, in particular the support from the JDF. This SOE will complement our suite of other policing activities that the Prime Minister mentioned, and our operations that have already begun to intensify ahead of the Yuletide season, as we surge in operations and in our deployments across the country. As we advance these strategies to reduce crime and violence across all police divisions, we will continue to enhance our intelligence capabilities and improve the use of scientific approaches and technology in our investigations, which have already resulted in the rapid clear-up of complex cases. We will not allow these criminal terrorists to profit from the fear they create in communities. And as long as Jamaicans need us to keep them safe in their communities, we will continue to respond. There's an urgency to what we do as a society. It is on this basis that there is no place for reticence in using every tool at our collective disposal to staunch the bloodletting. In closing, I just want to reassure the public that while we conduct various operations in St. James, we will attempt to manage the impact on normal lives and activities and people going about their normal business. However, there's likely to be some disruption and delays, and we ask for patience and understanding. I also use this medium to appeal to persons residing outside of the boundaries of the SOE to advise us if you see persons turning up in your communities that you may have concerns about. We ask basically for the public support to increase the chances of our collective success. The public, as always, can contact us by calling the JCF tip line at 811, police emergency at 119, or Crime Stop at 311. Thank you very much.
Thank you to the Commissioner of Police, Major General Anthony Anderson. I would like to now ask Brigadier General Markland Lloyd, Acting Chief of Defense Staff, to attend upon the platform.
Prime Minister, Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Minister of Defense, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security, the Honorable Horace Chang, other Ministers of Government, Commissioner of Police, Major General Anthony Anderson, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, Citizens of Jamaica, good morning. The Jamaica Defense Force supports the recommendation for the declaration of a state of emergency in the parish of St. James. Between January 1, 2023 and November 6, 2023, the St. James Police Division has cumulatively recorded the most murder and shooting incidents across Jamaica, primarily stemming from gang violence. The Jamaica Defense Force continues to pursue increased internal security deployments in support of the Jamaica Constabulary Force within the St. James Division. Over 11,000 deployments have been conducted since January 1, 2023. This marks our continued efforts towards maintaining peace and stability within the parish. With the additional infusion of authority from the SOEs, the joint force may better concentrate enhanced initiatives to specific criminal activities that have emerged within this space. I take this time to ask all our citizens, not just those living in the communities under this state of public emergency, to cooperate with the security forces. Lawlessness and criminality cannot continue unabated, and the JDF is committed to playing its part in the fight against crime. We urge you to join us in this fight by supporting the work of the security forces. Tell us what you know. Call the JDF tip line at 876-837-8888 or Crime Stop at 311. Your cooperation is critical to the success of our mission. I take this opportunity to reiterate the JDF's commitment to working with the JCF and our citizens to create a safer Jamaica for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brigadier General Lloyd. I'd like to thank Nationwide News Network as well as CVM TV for carrying this post-cabinet press briefing live this morning. Also, you can watch on YouTube PBCJ as well as the social media channels of Prime Minister, the Honorable Andrew Holness. I would like to now welcome Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security, the Honorable Dr. Horace Chang, to the platform.
Good morning, Honorable Prime Minister. Honorable Prime Minister, my colleague, members of the Cabinet, the Chief of Defense Staff, Commissioner of Police, members of the press, the members of the security forces. Only yesterday we were in the district of Salt Spring. It's a district I know well, and I've seen many, unfortunately, very brutal criminal violence activity in that district. But for the last 12 months in particular, we have seen a significant decline in that community based on active work by the security forces, the Jamaica Social Investment Fund, and other intervention by the private sector. However, in the last 10 days, we have seen an outbreak of very brutal violence. It started some days ago, the murder of another young man and his girlfriend. That particular incident resulted from one young man who had gotten bail, having been charged with a double murder in the parish of Westmoreland. He was also traveling in a public transportation, a taxi. And the taxi was intercepted at a school in Salt Spring, a small primary school, which we have seen, which is occupied by young children from the area, but in particular the district of Flower Hill. And I've seen some very good work being done to guide the students of that area. And they witnessed the brutal slaying of a French Jamaican citizen and his partner. Out of that flowed another murder in Flower Hill, and a young man was killed to be allegedly associated with that particular incident. And end result was, of course, on Monday evening, it was another brutal murder took place in which a young man was attacked and killed, but within that taxi was three children, 3 Jamaican children, 3 young boys, all under 10, attending a well-known school in Montego Bay, being taken home by a taxi that is known to take home children. In fact, this is a common cultural practice in rural Jamaica where the children of working parents tend to be taken to school by special taxi operators. It's not an unknown or unusual activity. The gentleman, in fact, had taken his own daughter to leave at his home and was returning to the district where the students reside and would be taking them to their home. They're small kids, 7, 8, and 9. 2 of them were taken away from us brutally by a man using an automatic weapon. This, in fact, was an act of terrorism, frightening and inspiring fear in our community. This kind of activity, despite of reduction in some activity in crime, seems to be of increasing activity in some of our communities. The JSCF data confirmed that there has been a sustained reduction in major crimes across the country in this last quarter. This is a result of some strategic investment by the government in strengthening and modernizing the security forces. We are better trained, better resourced, better equipped, and technology-enabled police force. Consequent on these investments, the police are able to respond much faster and operate based on accurate and actionable intelligence. Indeed, criminals therefore have to sought to become more dynamic to avoid the police. Hence, a significant increase in what is drive-by shootings and the use of automatic weapons attacking an individual wherever he is, and therefore significant increase in what we call killing of innocent citizens. So we have seen increase, triple and quadruple murders in the last few weeks, months in particular. The event in Salt Spring was, of course, not only heart-rending, but touched the emotion of the entire nation as we saw 2 children. And that was preceded by another incident in the corporate area where 3 individuals were killed, including a little girl. It is unfortunate that it is this kind of brutality that had to shake us again as a country. And I would hope that the entire nation would respond to the Prime Minister's call for unison in attacking these brutal criminals that will seek to terrorize our communities. And this kind of drive-by shooting in which one individual may be targeted, you find that many innocent bystanders, as anybody could have been in that taxi beside a child, or anyone standing on the shop piazza playing a game of domino, or just in fact relaxing in the district, could be killed by this kind of activity. This kind of criminal activity threatens the stability of our communities, incites fear, and put at risk the social and economic gains we have made over the last 6 years. They are murdering our children and our senior citizens. They are heartless, brutish criminals who are terrorizing our citizens. The government and the leadership of Prime Minister Holness will continue to make strong and decisive action to contain, apprehend, and bring criminals to justice. We'll provide the security forces with the required resources, fiscally and legally, to apprehend, to hunt, find, and apprehend these criminals. There will be no hiding place in Jamaica, can I assure you. The leadership of the security forces are determined, they are talented, and they are committed. And I want to assure the country that there will be no hiding place for any of them. We'll find them, and we'll bring them out, one way or the other. The nature of criminal activity in Jamaica has changed significantly, I said. They have taken to more dynamic action, but so too we have, in fact, equipped the police force. The government will do whatever it takes within the ambit of the law to secure the lives of Jamaicans, to provide good order, to retain safety, and ensure that we can continue to develop our society in an orderly manner. The security forces, led by the Commissioner, and the Jamaica Defense Force Chief of Staff will pursue these criminals, apprehend them, and bring them to justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister. We will be opening the floor to about 5 minutes of questions, as PM has a previous engagement shortly. Prime Minister, we're asking if you could attend upon the podium.
You're assuming that questions are for me.
Brigadier, could you stand beside the PM?
Yes.
Minister of National Security, could you stand there? Also,
Commissioner.
Commissioner of Police, could you stand beside the Minister of National Security? Naomi,
Yes.
our press secretary, will manage the question and answer segment.
Thank you, Minister. We ask that the members of the media identify themselves, including those who have orders of extinction.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Arthur Hall from Jamaica Observer. PM, it's unfortunate. I was here in December when you declared a state of emergency for St. James. I was back in May when there was a state of emergency, December 2022. I was back in May 2023 when a state of emergency was declared for St. James. I was back in June 2023 when a state of emergency was declared for St. James. PM, this seems to be the response, an immediate response to the flare-up in St. James, and then it quiet down, and then my friends in Salt Spring and Salem and Flankers and Gully get murdered again as soon as the state of emergency is done. PM, is this just a knee-jerk reaction to the death of the 3 people, including 2 young boys, and this is supposed to say to the nation, we are doing something?
Thank you for the question, Arthur. And I quite like the characterization that you have set up for me to destroy. The government must respond. And the fact that these things keep recurring is more so a testament to the nature of the beast that we tackle. It is also very clearly demonstrating that when we act and we are not supported in action by the extension of the emergency powers to finally bring to heel the beast, then the problem continues. You will recall that in 2018, the murder rate in St. James rose to levels that were far past countries at war. We instituted a state of public emergency with the support of the opposition. We had several extensions, and we brought the murder rate down by over 300. The states of public emergencies declared that you refer to were for 14 days because we did not have the support of the opposition in using these emergency powers to deal with the beasts of crime, the terrorists that are affecting us, operating under an illusion that somehow they will find God in their hearts and that they will be merciful on the people. We are faced with an existential threat by these terrorists. And so we need to rid ourselves of the illusion that somehow these criminals are going to find salvation in their heart and mercy for the people. They are a threat to our national security. They are a threat to your safety. And we need to be persistent and consistent in the measures that we put in place. We need to rid ourselves of the ambivalence in the message that we have been sending. Who is to be blamed for this when the government has been reacting and responding, but cannot get the support of the opposition in putting in place the measures We have put in place the laws. We can't go any further than the courthouse. We have given the police all the resources that we can out of our budget with other competing needs. And every time there has been an action, this government has not been flat-footed. We have been responsive. Gruesome, barbaric crimes have been committed. And our police have been there using the tools, using the law, investigating complex crimes, enterprise-level criminal activity. But there is a lack of recognition that after decades of underinvestment in our police force and our national security apparatus, after decades of a poor performing economy, after decades of a poor performing education system that continues to turn out persons who become members of gangs, after the breakdown of our social institutions, our family, we are just now at the point where we are recovering our economy, we are investing in rebuilding our social institutions, transforming our education system, growing our economy, investing in our national security. It will not change overnight. But we must be persistent and deliberate in putting forward and seeing through the measures that will bring to heel the beasts that are loose in the land. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
No, that's fine. I'll take another question.
Al has the other.
Hello, good morning, Prime Minister. Good morning, gentlemen. Prime Minister, you said it yourself. You said it was a beast that had to be tamed. And we see the rationale and necessity behind the state of emergency, given it does pose an existential threat. Prime Minister, isn't the time come now where you have to put more infinite resources behind crime fighting, employ more police personnel, more army personnel, and get people to back them? What's your thoughts on that? And may I just come up with a follow-up question? In light of what's happened, Bobby Montague talked about this El Salvador model. It's kind of ridiculed for it. What are your thoughts, and does he have a point?
All right. Again, thank you for that question. I'm going to take some time, permit me, because it is a multi-layered question and has to be answered very carefully. When this administration took over the reins of leadership of the country, one of the first area of focus was on national security. Before we implemented the state of public emergency, we created the zones of special operations. It was designed as almost a test run to give our security forces the ability to use force without violence, to use force in a structured, proportionate, restrained, dignified, strategic way. And that involved improvement in training, mainstreaming human rights, improving the resources. But I don't know if it has been said often enough, because the question keeps coming. This administration has also increased its recruitment and training, and it has now put itself in a net positive position in terms of being able to bring in more persons into the force than are leaving the force. So we have expanded the JCF. Similarly, we have expanded the JDF through the Jamaica National Service Corps, and we plan to even further expand. So we now have, in terms of a force, we have more boots to place on the ground. But it is still not sufficient, given the level and magnitude of the criminal problem and challenge that we face. So yes, we have been increasing our capabilities relative to the level of criminal activity in the country, but we are not at the level where our resources supersede the criminal activity, particularly in certain areas. So it's good that we have more policemen that we can place in communities. But there are other areas that we need to expand rapidly. For example, we need more detectives. If you were to take New York City, for example, I don't know what the statistics is, but I would suspect that they would have 3 times the number of detectives they have on force than we do. And they probably have 1/3 of the murders that we have. That's the kind of disproportionate position that we are in terms of resources to the magnitude of the problem. But yet, there is an expectation that with the resources that we have, we can deal with the problem that exists without increasing resources and increasing the powers to address it. The use of the state of public emergency is what you call a force multiplier. We are using the existing manpower to increase their capabilities. So we bring the army on in a structured and synergetic way. We give more powers to deter, to intervene and intercept. And that gives some respite for detectives to be able to do their work, for intelligence services to work, and to give safety and security to the people. We have always said that this is not going to be a long-term measure, but as long as the problem is greater than our capacity, we will have to use it. And we have been using it quite strategically. I'm not saying that we have used it perfectly. We obviously are always seeking to improve it so that in the use of these emergency powers, we don't violate the rights of citizens. Now, you mentioned the El Salvador model. First, let us be clear that Jamaica and El Salvador have 2 different constitutional arrangements and jurisprudence. So immediately we start off on 2 different planes of possibilities. But let it not be said, and let it be clearly understood, that the results of the El Salvador model is that their murder rate has gone from the highest in the region to now, within a matter of months, a year or 2 years now, they're now the lowest in the region. I make no comments as to what the impact of that is on their society. I don't know, time will tell. But I don't hear anyone complaining other than outsiders. I don't hear any massive demonstrations in the society about violation of human rights or whatever. Has not come to my attention. But what has come to my attention is that the society, by and large, feels free. They feel safe because the criminals amongst them have been removed. Now, can Jamaica do that? You know, my view is that our constitutional arrangements would not support that. That's my view. But one thing is clear, that if the criminals continue along the path that they are, they will move the social and conscience perspective of the society more towards calling for extreme measures, because that's what happens. If people can't get law to keep them secure, they're going to call for order. Typical. If you can't get law, people settle for order. So it's important that as we face this challenge, we here use the law to be able to overcome this challenge. And we see it happen all around the world. So it's absolutely important that as we debate these matters, we ensure that we come down on the side of quick action, that we change our laws, that we improve the resources so that we can be able to preserve, ultimately, what defines us as a free and democratic society.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Our final two questions then on that side.
Morning, everyone. I'm Jamila Maitland from TVJ. PM, you said that you don't come. This is your first time here, so I'm hoping I can get a 2-for-1 special, Mr. Morgan. My first question is that, Prime Minister, your statutory declarations have not been certified by the Integrity Commission. The implication of this goes far and wide. Why hasn't it been certified, and does the public have anything to be concerned about? And two, Jamaica didn't vote at the UNGA about the humanitarian truce, yet or...
Jamila, you would appreciate that this is for the state of emergency.
Well,
and
PM,
so
you don't
those are
come
the
here-
questions that we're entertaining at this time.
Are you giving...
Do you have questions on the state of emergency for St. James?
Well, PM, we don't see it very often, so...
Please, let her answer the question, because
And just one more before you go. We didn't vote at the UNGA, yet our reason for not voting is really a vote toward the humanitarian truce. Why didn't we not vote publicly? And is there any regrets right now to vote for the humanitarian truce, and that's between the fight in the war against Israel and the Hamas rulers? That's it.
well, firstly, I think that it is not fair to say that you don't see me often. Because we have met up on several tours and other occasions. The post-cap, just to be clear, the post-cabinet press briefing is for the ministers and the various portfolios. And I want to be clear that on all important matters, my government does provide the opportunity for information to be dispensed to the public and for our ministers to be questioned. And I'm very happy that the post-cabinet is being conducted routinely and consistently. As it relates to my integrity declarations, I too am concerned that they have not yet certified them. They have written to me asking various questions. I have provided answers, and they have written to me again, and I'm in the process of providing those answers. You will, however, appreciate that it does take some time, and particularly for me, to get 2 or 3 days to go through matters and provide answers. I simply have to be very frugal with my time. And I suspect the same for the Integrity Commission, that have to go through several thousands of declarations. But I would expect that they would give some priority to my declarations. I do hope to be able to respond to them before the end of this week. So I'm hopeful that they would do their work and provide the nation with the necessary certification. To be clear, I have tried not to comment on the issue because I find myself in an invidious position in that I have to protect and defend most times the institutions of the country. So my silence should not be interpreted as not wanting to address it, but I do have another role, and that role is to protect and to defend the institutions, the laws that we have put in place. So I'm hopeful that in short order this matter will be resolved. By the way, you should also know that it is quite routine that the Integrity Commission will write to persons over and over again. And there would be several persons whose statutory declarations are not certified because they are in this continuous process of asking questions and trying to make determinations. My situation, obviously, would be public, and therefore it would cause some concerns. And so I accept and I acknowledge that. But it would not have been the first time that the Integrity Commission would have taken a long time to resolve my matters. And I suspect that as Prime Minister, they would want to be very detailed in what they do. I would hope that there is no difference in my treatment than given to others. And I really do not I would not want to think so. And your other question, again, Shamil, I want to thank you for the opportunity to answer the question and to destroy the falsehoods that have surrounded. When it comes to Jamaica's foreign policy, we handle it very carefully. There are those who are trying to suggest that somehow our foreign policy and position globally has been diminished. If we were to look at the facts, Jamaica has never been on so many international platforms than I have been on, and this administration has been on, than any other administration before. And I challenge them. Why is that so? Because Jamaica has maintained a principled and consistent foreign policy. Because Jamaica has also operated in a strategic way in making sure that we also look out for our national interest. On the situation in the Middle East between Israel and the Palestinians, we are friends of both peoples. And we are very distressed, saddened, and concerned about the innocent loss of life, particularly the killing of children who have no part or cause in a conflict. In the same way that we speak unequivocally about the killing of innocent children in Jamaica who have no part in a conflict. We're very concerned always about any act that could be considered terrorism on any state. In the same way, we are concerned here about acts that could be considered terrorist acts in our own country. And so we speak very clearly on those issues. I believe a humanitarian pause is necessary in Gaza. The images that are being broadcast all over the world, and my own research into the subject and the information that we receive. I have friends on both sides. Jamaica has a Palestinian community. I noted their peaceful protests earlier. Jamaica also has a Jewish community. We have been petitioned by both. Jamaica has voted many times in support of the Palestinian cause, and we have also voted in support of matters to do with Israel, because on both sides there are claims that could be justified. We don't want to see innocent people die, and that is our position. It is indeed, obviously, an unfortunate circumstance that we did not get to cast a vote, physically make the vote. But as you have said, everything that we have said and done, including delivering a statement on behalf of CARICOM and helping to craft and word and draft the statement, suggests that that would have been our vote. That someone would then seek to make an issue of it. I think it's an extreme in the position. So the consideration is being given, obviously, to see if that position can be rectified post the vote. because we would not want it to be a continued distraction from what we intend to be our position, which is quite clear. That our position is we supported the humanitarian interventions for the Palestinian people. So on that matter, I think we should be careful that we don't seek to destroy our own interests by making, extreme comments and allegations regarding our foreign policy.
Prime Minister, thank you. And we did say one final, so we'll give it to Mr. Brooks.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Ricardo Brooks, Nationwide News. Considering that the matter of the constitutionality of the routine use of these states of emergency is to be inquired into by the courts, isn't your continued use of the measure improper without receiving constitutional guidance from the judiciary? And regarding your statutory declarations, if the Integrity Commission continues to delay the publishing, would you commit to independently having them audited and releasing them yourself?
That's a very good question. I've not contemplated having them audit. I do have to prepare, for example, financial statements. It would not be a challenge to have them audited. But I don't think it would, it would probably be useful, but it's still important to have them certified by the Integrity Commission. On the other question related to the constitutionality, the matter is before the courts, but the courts have not ruled that they are unconstitutional. And the persons who are asking that question should also answer, what would you have the government do? Should we stand back? Should we allow more innocent people to be killed? Should we leave it to chance? Would that amount to a dereliction? I think the people who are asking those questions should answer that. I need to fulfill my oath to the people that I will act in their best interest to keep them safe. And I think the Jamaican public would see demonstrably that this government has acted and continues to act and will do what is necessary within the law, unless declared otherwise, to keep them safe. Thank you.
Prime Minister, thank you. And
No
to the
questions for
security
the Commissioner,
chiefs.
the acting chief.
Well,
I was inviting the question.
we can take questions to the other members, but Prime Minister really has to leave now. So Naomi, if you may, we'd like to thank Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, for his first, but I know will not be the last attendance to post-cabinet press briefing. Thanks, Prime Minister. Naomi, you may take some other questions with, if members of the media have questions for the Minister of National Security, the Acting Chief of Defense Staff, or the Commissioner of Police. It won't be long, just a few minutes.
Yes, thank you, Minister. There are a few, so we'll just go around the room for them. Security Chiefs, Commissioner and CDS and Minister, if you could go back up. I believe Arthur, Al, and Jamila do have some questions. Let's start again with Arthur.
Yeah, my question is for the Minister of National Security and Deputy Prime Minister. Dr. Chang, it is clear that opposition is not going to support the extension of the state of emergency. One thing the opposition has repeatedly proposed is the enhanced security measures legislation. That's in your chambers. Why we haven't taken that legislation to Parliament yet?
Well, first of all, the state of public emergency is a particular legislative tool we intend to use where violence reaches a certain level. Enhanced security measures and those different concept, and I'll come back to it. The view of the security forces, and from the only assessment and detailed intelligence report I've been given, the activities in St. James justifies that kind of extreme measure. We will look at the history of the security social state of public emergency St. James, when it started, I think the Prime Minister alluded to it, we were at 343 murders, which meant that St. James had over 100 murders per 100,000. That was a fact of history. State of public emergency, we brought it down to by 70%, and what we're doing now is to ensure that when there's a spike, we intervene before it begins to get to those levels again. We appreciate that short-term measures allowed to use the state of public emergency only for 14 days will mean that we can cauterize immediate action, but it take a longer imposition to ensure we can have longer-term effect. It should be noted, however, that even current station in Jamaica, that the murder rate has been increasing throughout the Latin American Caribbean region in the last 2 years in particular. Somebody refers to the increased production of cocaine in the production areas and increased trading in narcotics, as well as within those cocaine, fentanyl, as well as the increased advanced fee fraud activity in Jamaica. The trend is up, and in Jamaica we have been able to reduce that trend. Not where we want to be, not one we're going to shout victory about, where homicide is some between 10 and 12% down, while other criminal activity in the region are 25% down. We see the use of the state of public emergency as a critical element in saving lives and restoring order in certain communities. The concept of enhanced security measures need to be is something that the lawyers have to go through. Bear in mind, but the term, there was not an enhanced security measure bill. The government undertake to institute enhanced security measures in legislation, and several pieces have been done. The new Bail Act is what we would consider an enhanced security Bail Act. The Firearms Act, all those actions, several other pieces of legislation. There is call for a specific measure that would give the security forces elements of the state of public emergency that would strengthen their hands without going to a state of public emergency. The laws have not been able to settle at a level that the security force can be comfortable with, and that satisfy the policy outline we have given to them. And that's a matter that I cannot go beyond.
Next question then can come from Al, and then we'll go on that side.
Good morning again, gentlemen. This question is primarily directed towards the police commissioner, and you can jump into, Minister. But you heard the Prime Minister say that the #1 priority for any government is the welfare of its citizens, and he's right. Given that fact, and he mentioned about resources, have you gone to the Prime Minister, or is in your mind a set figure of what you need to get on top of crime? And should we start thinking about a certain percentage of the budget going towards taming the beast, as he called 30%.
it? Okay, so let me just take the path about sufficiency. So clearly, as the Prime Minister articulated, we are in the process of increasing the size of the force. Even when we initially instituted our emergency, state of emergency, there's always a sense of building the force capability whilst you use this measure to save lives. Now, one of the questions is, how many lives do you need to save to make it worth it? That's a separate question. In the meantime, we had to develop within the police force the ability to actually recruit and train enough people to start to increase our numbers. On average, we lose about 400 or so people a year. At one time, we were training 400, and so we stood still. We moved from a single training facility, and over the years, and including during the COVID years, we expanded that capability to have 4 training facilities and to be able to turn out 1,250 officers a year. And these aren't just an increase in numbers, but in terms of the qualifications of the people joining, and we're getting a lot more people who have other options. But I believe that a career in policing can be very rewarding, particularly if these youngsters who are coming in have access to tools and technologies to be able to deliver policing service to the level that they expect, that they see elsewhere. Those things have increased the attractiveness of the organization. And apart from that, obviously, our outreach to our public has assisted in that. At the moment, or traditionally, we've had an establishment of about 14,000. One of the first things we did on looking at the establishment was using a very scientific way, determined how many people we need, and it's just over 18,000. So we add between 800 and 900 persons a year, and that's what we'll continue to do until we reach these established levels that will give us enough persons to pervade the country properly. And when we layer on top of that the various technologies that are available and are becoming available, the combination of that should allow us to police without necessarily having extraordinary measures.
Thank you, Commissioner. Minister?
I could add to that. When you took government, there are a number of things you have to answer when you ask these questions. One, we had 11,000 officers at that time. We are now near 14,000. But beyond that is that the police force and leadership, Minister Anderson, have gone through a study that indicates where we should be. Prior to that, you had many calls of put more boots on the ground, do more, without any kind of objective analysis. In fact, that was another thing that restrained our initial investment. While we made it a priority, our investment will start to take root for 2019 after a year of analysis, so that you know what we wanted to go. There was very little done prior to that, examine what kind of police force we needed and what numbers we needed. The commissioners have indicated somewhere near 18,000, although the establishment was 14,000, we're at 11,000, or less sometimes. Secondly, activities to provide the police force with the equipment required. There was no kind of indication. Vehicles were bought when the mobile patrol literally shut down. You buy some and you put them on the road again. I've indicated that for police force to operate efficiently, we should acquire operationally at least 600 vehicles. We're not quite there yet. The reality is that we had 3 fiscal years of constraint on our investment, although we did invest significantly in the security forces then. The COVID years ensured that we had to direct increased resources to a clear and present danger that existed with the pandemic. So our commitment and our policy is clear. And that just indicate that training strong leadership and strong security force personnel, professionals, that's what they are. It's not a matter of just putting a police uniform and a gentleman, or put them in a building and call it a police station. We took a position to establish some strategic development, both in the police and the army. Army had a clear vision going down. The police has established its direction and strategic development under this leadership. So there was no idea what a police station, for example, was find a building, make sure not leaking, put the police in there. A police station is a professional, functioning institution. It must be designed to suit the police. That's one of the first things we did. I walked into a police station in Portland, the commissioner, and just looked at it. This is not functional. A police station must be so designed. We have, in fact, sought to repair and overhaul all our police stations, all 186 facilities across the island. The job is not complete, but we are well on the way, and we'll continue that program. The government's commitment is not wavering. We will, in fact, build a police force that will have the resources and the strength to maintain law and order. Until then, we have to use extraordinary forces and continue to engage the Jamaica Defense Force in support of the police, because the safety and lives of our citizens is the #1 priority.
Thank you, Minister. I believe we have one final one, and then we'll wrap this side up.
Morning again, Jamila from TVJ. My question is to Dr. Chang and for the Commissioner. There was a recent Indicom report about 14 people dying in police lockups. 10 of them was because they were sick. What does the police have to say about this? Indicom is saying the police can't be using the lockups as for prolonged usage when there is an institution for that. And two, with the SOE now, a lot of people are predicting more persons will be detained, and we already have overcrowded lockups. How does the police plan to address this?
Overcrowding is a relative issue, and I'll answer that. Yeah, as the Prime Minister indicated, and I have repeated on many occasions, we have a very low incarceration rate. Our lockups, of course, are a number of people, but the Indicom report, if you look at it thoroughly, it was 14 people over a pretty prolonged period. In fact, we have one of the lowest levels of death in lockups or in prison in the region. That's a fact. If not the lowest, it's one of the lowest. So I think that should begin from there. 10 years. 10 died, yeah. You know what I'm saying? But over a period of time, that would reflect that we have one of the lowest levels among the incarcerated in the region. So while we speak of the highest amount of homicides, we also have the lowest level in our prisons. That's a fact. Clearly, people are sometimes detained who are ill, and you can have incidents where they died. I think we looked through I in fact read the report thoroughly, and there was nothing in there to suggest negligence by the police officers. Clearly, when anyone is detained, they have to retain the lockups before they go to the correctional service. That's just the nature of jurisprudence and the criminal justice system. But I agree, it is not a job that the police look forward to, and one that we may have to review as we go forward. Commissioner, may wish to comment on it.
2 points today. One, it's unfortunate when anybody dies in a lockup. We generally have about 2,000 people, just under 2,000 in our lockups across the country, in custody, some for a long time. People on remand who unfortunately haven't or can't be transferred to the correctional service to keep them in remand. So they remain with us, about just under 2,000. At the highest point of a state of emergency, back in 2018, I believe it was, only 15% of our entire lockup population, or 10% as a matter of fact, was actually in detention. The rest were there for remand, for all the other reasons that they're still there. So as a percentage of our total lockup population, the states of emergency don't add that much to it. And obviously, one of the things, the people who don't need to be in lockup, we try to get them out. Some of them are even persons who just won't or can't take up bail. So they remain with us until such time. Some of those, in some cases, we may go back to the court and ask them to revise the conditions, because really we don't want to hold people who we don't need to hold. We need to make enough space for those who we must hold and need to keep. But it is a challenge. It is a challenge for us. And it actually diverts quite a bit of resources to just manage that many prisoners. So that's where we're at.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Commissioner and CDS acting. Minister Morgan.
Very much, Naomi. Want to give a special thank you to our Prime Minister, who is no longer here. Want to thank Deputy Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Horace Chang, also Commissioner of Police, Major General Anthony Anderson, Brigadier General Lloyd, also representatives from the Ministry of National Security, the Office of the Prime Minister. I mean, too many to mention. Thank you all for attending here today. Also members of the media and those who are listening and watching on More FM, on CVM TV, and on other stations, as well as on social media. This has been Post-Cabinet Press Briefing until next week, 11. Well, I made a mistake this morning saying that we were in September. Can't believe the year is finishing so early. So until next week, 8 a.m. on Wednesday for another Post-Cabinet Press Briefing. Thanks to everyone for tuning in, for watching, and for listening. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.